paper dolls. We recently moved, and while we were moving, I found a box in my closet that I had not touched since probably high school, and it had some paper dolls in it. Had forgotten about all of these, but the second I saw this, I remembered it. I remember playing with this, and this actually came from my grandma as a birthday card. I thought it would be fun to make some paper dolls of my own characters. Today I'm just going to make one for one character, but I want to make a couple of different outfits to kind of figure out how the process works, because paper dolls are interesting and going to be a little bit difficult to design because you have your doll, and then it has to have its clothing items, and they have to have tabs, and you have to have the tabs in the right place, otherwise things get kind of weird and the clothes don't stay on. Back to the topic. Originally, paper dolls there's a little bit of debate. Some sources claim that they were developed in 1810, others say 1812, some say 1816. Across all the different resources I can find, early 1800s is when paper dolls became a thing and became more mainstream. Alright, so in America at least, the first paper dolls that were commercially produced apparently were to go alongside a book, and so you could kind of read the book and then act out the scenes with your paper doll. And as the printing press became more and more common, it was cheaper to print more paper dolls, and so as a result, they started to get more popular. Companies would also produce them by following the fashions of the time, and so you could buy a paper doll in the newest fashionable dress, and then, if you liked it enough, maybe you'd buy the dress. So it was kind of used as a marketing thing, but it was also a very cheap, inexpensive toy. I'd have a couple of fancy Barbies, and then the majority of my toys were more paper dolls because we didn't have a whole bunch of money. I know I had more at some point. I think I may have donated some, but these, for example, were some princess ones. At some point, I decided that I didn't want to cut them out anymore. I think this set is the Little Mermaid. Yep, there's Ariel. I don't think this is a paper doll. I feel like this came from like a McDonald's box. I remember at some point, one of my friends ripped the head off of one of these. I really did enjoy playing with these as a kid. Oh, I guess I did have a Pocahontas one at some point. Apparently the Pocahontas one at the time was $2.89, so it's probably fair to say that each of these was about $3 total. And then this one, like I said, was a birthday present from my grandma. And I actually looked into this recently, and apparently this was the Peppermint Rose, and I guess there's actually a lot of other dolls in this set, which I didn't know about as a kid. I only knew about her because she was the paper doll that I had, but these were made so beautifully. The illustrations are phenomenal. Look at all of the detail. I'm going to be honest, I want this coat, and there's a good chance I'm gonna sew one of these. This was her, like, main dress. One of the difficult things is you have to have the tabs placed in the right area so that it stays on. When I was talking to Mom about wanting to make a paper doll, she let me borrow this, because apparently back in the 70s when she was a kid, she also was really into paper dolls, and she was more crafty than I was at my age. So she actually would buy the paper dolls and then make her own clothing for them, which again, it never occurred to me. She'd gotten this book at some point for the paper doll aspect, and she thought that the designs were just so pretty, so she never actually cut them out. Here's our figure, and then you would just cut out the different dresses and put them on her. This one has different figures in it, so these outfits all go with Caroline. These ones all go for Beatrice. And then I think these ones are designed so that at the end you can place them on a little holder and they'll stand up. I feel like I've seen more paper dolls in the last couple of years. I feel like they've been making a little bit of resurgence online. So to start, I had to figure out who I wanted to draw for my paper doll, and I figured who better than one of my oldest original characters, Mikosha. You are now going to watch me struggle for a while to draw her not in a 3/4 view. In the end, I think I still ended up having her head in a 3/4 view pose because I could not draw her just straight on. Once I finally got a pose that I liked, I started to line her, and this process took so long. I am so out of practice when it comes to lining in Photoshop these days. I've just been for the last 2 years, mostly drawing in Procreate. I still love my Photoshop, I still love my tablet, but drawing on the screen is such a different feeling than drawing on a normal tablet that just sits on your desk. I do go back in quite often and futz around. I learned a couple of years ago that if your line art's not looking quite right, you can just use the Liquify tool to push it where you want it to go, and then you can just go over it again. Another thing that took a long time for me to get okay with doing was the fact that you also can have big, chunky, ugly lines and then erase them down, and that was eye-opening for me because I am the kind of artist who would spend 10 minutes redrawing the same exact line 100 times and having it not look right, and then I'm just like, oh, I can just push it over and erase. I'm also using one of my absolute favorite tricks that I learned in like 2009 on DeviantArt on a random tutorial. Basically, this artist had said that for them to do quick base colors, what they do is they select the area, expand the area by 2 so that it goes under your line art, and then you can fill in your color on your new layer, and it won't have that weird little white line that happens all the time when you just fill it in like normal. I have an action in Photoshop where I select the outside of whatever my drawing is, and then I hit play, and basically what my action does is it expands the selection by 2 pixels, so it'll go under the lines. It makes a new layer under my line art layer, it inverts it so that it'll fill everything inside the lines, and then it fills it with this purple color, and I just have it set to purple because I was in a hurry and that was the color I had on hand. And then what I do is I lock the layer, make it whatever I want my base color to be, and then I make new layers, and each new layer will be for the hair, for the clothes, for the whatever I want it to be, and I do the same trick to just quickly get the colors in. So I select line art, so on the line art layer I select, for example, all of the hair. I have another action that I run that just expands it by 2, and then that's all it does. But that way I don't have to go up to select, expand, 2, and like do it the long way. And so this is literally how I do almost all of my base coloring, is just with these actions. And you still have to go in and do some editing and make sure that, you know, it's not perfect. So if your line's not erased all the way or filled all the way, sometimes it doesn't work perfectly, but it saves me so many hours. I cannot recommend it enough. While I was working on her base design, I was thinking about what I wanted for her clothing to be, and so I knew there were a few things I wanted. I knew I wanted her to have a kimono, I wanted her to have her official Neopets traveling outfit. Keep in mind this outfit is from like 2007, and that was one of the very few items that a hissy could wear that had a top and a skirt. I also wanted some cute fluffy dresses that she might not ever have been able to wear in her little story area, but just dresses that I think she would have looked cute in. So I have like a sailor's dress, I've got a selkie dress, I've got the strawberry dress because the strawberry dress is just so gosh dang cute, and I also had a thing where I realized that having her arm up, while I liked the pose, I was realizing that it might not be the best for a paper doll because it would be a little bit difficult for the tabs to click onto, so I did have to readjust her arm, and I was being lazy, and so I just copy pasted the right arm. I think it worked for what I needed it to. After I had her list of outfits, I started sketching, and then once the sketches were done, I started lining them, and I would do quite a few things differently. For one, I would have probably made a few less outfits, but I wasn't 100% sure what exactly I wanted, so I was like, I'm just gonna try everything, and so I just threw a bunch of things at the wall and saw what stuck, and actually quite a few of them I think worked good. One thing I was not careful enough about was the tab placement. I sort of just chucked them on willy-nilly, didn't really think about, you know, how it was going to attach to the body, so a few of the tabs definitely could be better. They also should have been thicker. They were not thick enough, and so she does have a habit of the dresses just falling off, but I know now for next time. There's a couple of times throughout these drawings that I didn't feel like doing laces or buttons properly. So basically what I did was I made a new layer and I set my brush to be white and I gave it a black stroke outline of 3, and then I just drew wherever I wanted the laces to go. Just erased the white part after I rasterized the layer. Easy stitching without having to carefully draw all of the laces. I know that it's not the most efficient way to do it. They are a little bit jagged, but for what this was going to be and for the size it was going to be, it was fine. I don't know why, but when I was working on this, I worked on it for multiple days. I think active drawing time was probably about 4 days, and no matter what day I was on, I could not for the life of me make these swooshy lines perfect. I had to work so hard on any long swooshy line. I don't know if I'm just not used to Photoshop anymore. I don't know if I was just not doing enough warm-ups, but I struggled so hard with any long line. Thankfully, the Liquify tool always has my back, and thankfully, it's Photoshop, so if your line's not perfect, you can always redo it. There were a few times where I had to bust out the line tool. I had to use the curve tool, which I do not remember how to use very well because I never used that thing. I also had to use circles a lot of times to get the bottom of the skirts to look right, but thankfully, all that line art and boring sketching is now behind me, and I can work on the thing that I wanted to do the most, which is the coloring. I love coloring so much. It's literally my favorite part of art. I was getting fatigued at this point, so the coloring, I didn't go quite as hard as I normally would have. I just did some gentle shading and gentle highlights. I didn't feel like going to an extreme for this project just because it was my family, but for these ones, I just kept it nice and simple, and I definitely regretted having so many different outfits. I should have just stuck to a dress, a top, a pant, and maybe a second dress. after I had all of my images drawn, colored, sized to whatever size I wanted them to be, I put them on a large canvas that was 11 by 17 inches, and I wandered on down to the print shop, had them printed on a cardstock, wandered on back home, and then we began the long and laborious process of cutting these out. I will say, if you're gonna make a paper doll, don't do what I did and have little lines around the image. Give your image thicker lines. That way when you're cutting them out, you don't have to be so overwhelmingly careful. That way if you're cutting it out, you can cut the little bit of the line and it's fine. This took hours and hours and hours and hours and hours to cut because the lines were so small and delicate. Also because I had a lot of them, but mostly the lines were really small and delicate. This is also where I realized that I was not being careful enough with the tab placements, and so the two big takeaways: careful with the tab placement and have thicker lines. Something I cannot get over is how cute and amazing these ended up looking at the end. I love, 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 love how they turned out. I think it is so cute. I want to make more of these for more of my characters. I want to make one of these for me, but I just love that after all that hard work, I have this adorable physical paper doll that I can now play with. And I don't know, for me, I think that's just one of the coolest things, is having something physical at the end of all of your effort. I will say, while I was cutting these out, I did accidentally spill water on them, so a few of them do have the print flaking off and, there's some smudging here and there, but I think that it's okay. I can always reprint them if it bugs me enough.